I'm Ben Edwards. I am the Dean at Detroit Baptist Theological Seminary. Christianity is all about Jesus Christ, and so if you want to understand Christianity, you have to understand what the Bible says about Jesus. And so first, let's consider who was Jesus. The Bible teaches very clearly that Jesus is one with God. Jesus is the one who created the world and has existed from eternity. John 1 says, "In the beginning was the Word," and the context shows that John uses this to refer to Jesus. "And the Word was with God, and the Word was God." He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Jesus, however, was not simply God. He was also a human. He was fully God, but he took sinless humanity on himself and became fully man. As John later on in the passage says, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Because Jesus was divine, he never did anything wrong. So the Bible teaches that Jesus was a unique person, someone who was fully God and fully man and never sinned. So why did Jesus come to earth? In order to understand why Jesus came to earth, we have to look back to the very beginning of the Bible. Right after God created the world, God made a perfect world, culminating in man as God's ultimate creation. God intended man to serve him by ruling over creation. However, the first man, Adam, rebelled against God and placed himself into the role that only God should fulfill. God had set up Adam as our representative, so his rebellion plunged all of humanity into sin or into rebellion. From Adam on, people have naturally acted as their own gods and have done what was wrong by disobeying God and not submitting to him. We serve ourselves by nature. And so humanity now lives separated from God and in rebellion against him. We don't enjoy the relationship we were made to have with him. And we don't have the ability to make things right with him because of our rebellious nature. As the Apostle Paul said in Romans 3, quoting David in the Psalms, "None is righteous, no, not one. No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one." Jesus came to earth to deal with that problem. His very name means God saves. He was given this name because he was to save his people from their sins. And he did this by dying on a Roman cross, as some of his disciples and his mother watched him die. So who killed Jesus? From the scriptures, it could be said that the Jews were responsible for Jesus' death, or it could also be said that the Romans, especially Pontius Pilate, were responsible for Jesus' death. But ultimately, how Jesus himself would answer this question is that no one took his life from him. Rather, he willingly offered his own life. He said, "I lay down my life for the sheep. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord." He laid down his life voluntarily. And this voluntary sacrifice was the will of his Father. It was his Father's will that Jesus laid down his life for sinners. Why would Jesus do something like that? And why would the Father be pleased with that? The answer is that God was not satisfied with the fallen condition of mankind. He wanted to deal both with their separation from him and their rebellion against him. But God is a holy and righteous God. His holiness means, in part, he cannot allow sin in his presence, but must respond to sin in divine wrath. His justice means that sin must be paid for, and the payment for sin, according to Romans 6:23, is death. Or as Ezekiel says, the soul who sins shall die. So God killed Jesus as the sacrifice to pay for sin. And what did Jesus' death accomplish? The Bible teaches that Jesus' death satisfied God's wrath by removing sin. Jesus was able to do this because he had no sin. So he died as a substitute for sinners. It was for your sin and my sin that Jesus died. As the prophet Isaiah says, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his stripes we are healed. The reason we know that God accepted Jesus' sacrifice is that Jesus rose from the dead, leaving the tomb in which he was buried empty. And he appeared to his disciples in the flesh. Now, why does this matter? And more importantly, why does this matter for you? This matters because Jesus is the only way for you to have the relationship with God that he intended for you to have. Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. The only way to have a relationship with God is to deal with your separation from him and your rebellion against him. And Jesus is the only way you can do that.